3 months after marriage, their debt nearly swallowed their future.
My husband and I have really decided we need to be really focused on the same page about our finances. Together, we have probably just under $1 million in debt, and we want to know how to get debt-free without filing bankruptcy.
She was newly married, about 3 months into a marriage in which both spouses wanted to get on the same page about money. Together, they faced probably just under $1 million in debt. The couple had kept working, kept their advanced degrees, and kept a substantial lifestyle until the weight of that number became real. The caller explained that the mortgage was roughly $210,000. Much of the remainder came from student loans, credit cards, personal loans, and car debt. She spoke quietly but clearly. They wanted to become debt-free, and they wanted to do it without filing bankruptcy. Their household income, about $230,000 a year. Their ages, she was 29, he was 32. Both had advanced degrees, he with an MBA, she with an advanced degree in policy, and both now worked in government. But despite the income and the education, their spending had far outpaced their means. As the host listened, the problem became obvious. This was not only a numbers issue. Channing admitted that the student loans were mostly hers and that her husband carried the bulk of the credit card debt. The caller repeated what they had already said on the line. The household had spent well beyond its means. The host's response was blunt. This couldn't be solved by tweakery. It was deeper. The host framed the crisis like this. The math was a symptom. The real problem was why they had spent that way. The couple had been living 5 to 10 times, beyond what their true financial situation would allow. The host predicted a painful pivot. The lifestyle would have to be demolished and rebuilt. The tone was tough, but not cruel. The changes would be really emotional and would force them to confront personal motives behind the spending. Channing's voice showed acceptance and fear. The host told them the fix would require humility, radical behavior change, and spiritual contentment. The change would not feel good at first when friends and family might think they'd lost their minds. But the host insisted the long-term payoff would be relational, spiritual, and financial. The host asked for specifics. The home was worth about $300,000. There was some equity, but not enough to solve everything. A condo had been rented out. Channing had rented it while saving for the wedding. That condo now held about $90,000 in value that could be used strategically. They discussed third-party relief programs for credit card bundling. The host cautioned that some of those programs were incompetent in follow-through. The recommendation was clear. List debts smallest to largest and assault them, not depend on weak administrative solutions. The host emphasized painful but necessary choices. The home should be sold only as a last resort. Cars might be sold if needed, but the lifestyle spending had to stop now. As the host continued the conversation, the advice they shared would completely change his perspective. The host began to make concrete moves based on the numbers Channing had given. They celebrated the decision to sell the unused condo. Putting the roughly $90,000 toward a debt snowball would create immediate traction. The host explained that the condo money would wipe out a big chunk of the problem and jumpstart the rest of the plan. They laid out the attitude required. The couple would have to stop spending on everything non-essential. The host repeatedly framed the next few years as a necessary season of beans and rice, a humbling period that would strip away the impulses that had produced the problem. This wasn't punishment, it was a restructuring of life priorities. Channing and her husband lived with her parents to make the transition less painful. That move, the host said, would reduce friction while they executed hard, honest steps to repay debt. The host reminded them that being educated does not immunize anyone from poor choices. Channing said she and her husband had made decisions thinking they could pay things down as they went. Those assumptions broke under reality. The host painted a clear image. Driving a modest car, staying out of restaurants, and ignoring social pressure would be the new normal. That new normal would be disorienting, but it would also be freeing. The hosts affirmed that this kind of radical behavior change would also test and strengthen the marriage. They promised support and urged them to call again if they needed help. By the end of the call, a plan had been set in motion. The condo sale would deliver cash to the debt snowball. Smaller debts would be listed smallest to largest and attacked. The couple would accept temporary humiliation and social skepticism as the cost of permanent freedom. The host spoke plainly. This would be brutal and humbling, but it would also produce growth. Channing's tone softened. She heard the plan and understood the seriousness of the work. The hosts made it clear they believed the couple could do it, that the couple's intelligence and earnings made the goal achievable, so long as they embraced the deep behavioral change. For Channing and her husband, this call was more than financial triage. It was a moment of reckoning. Years of choices had to be faced honestly. The hosts left them with the closing truth. The math would follow the character change. If they removed pride, embraced discipline, and redirected the $90,000 from the condo into a swifter debt snowball, the path to freedom would begin. This was not a quick fix, it was a transformation. In time, the couple's tone might change from fear to cautious hope. What began as a desperate call became the first deliberate step toward control. If this story resonated, subscribe for more real financial stories and transformations.